Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Amos, FERN, and CDs for Meals and other partners for the invitation to share an update of this initiative, which has very interesting parallels with what Solofina just presented. The only difference being that our focus was the country level and supporting select African national governments on their food systems transformation journey. And this is the initiative that we call FSTIP, or Food Systems Transformative Integrated Policy. And let me share my screen, if I can find it here. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, here we go. So, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Rockefeller Foundation. I'm a consultant with the Rockefeller Foundation based in Nairobi, supporting the foundation's food initiative. This has been a partnership with IDRC, who is present on this call, as well as other partners, the Tony Blair Institute, APHRC, Academia 2063, BCG, the World Food Program, AGRA, and IFPRI. And this is an initiative that we have been running now since April in these 3 countries, Rwanda, Ghana, and Malawi. And the intent here is really to share an update of what we've done so far and what do we see emerging in the next phase of this initiative. And like I said, our goal was really to support African governments committed to food systems transformation in this journey, which we know is very complex. Food systems are complex. Food systems transformation is even more complex. So we thought that governments that are also aligned with this vision of sustainable, healthy diets for all could use some support in initiatives completely owned by them. So this is, by definition, we view it as a demand-driven initiative, but trying to bring together the capabilities and resources of these different coalition members, as well as others in the future, to support these countries and governments on this journey. And our entry point was the policy angle, because especially in Africa, the policy, the government government actors play such a key role in the food system and local economies and societies. But of course, I mean, it has to go way beyond that. We also realized that initially, in the lead up to the Food Systems Summit, which was, let's say, our big milestone in terms of this initiative, the best contribution we could offer in the short amount of time available was to really try to produce a fact-based foundation or a diagnostic analysis of the food systems of these 3 different countries. We also saw that it was very complementary. This effort of producing a diagnostic analysis was very complementary to the food systems dialogues, which by their very nature were more qualitative and aspirational in nature, were really about including all the voices, getting all the perspectives, and trying to fashion a common vision for the country's future food system. We thought that a more analytical and data-driven work interacting with those dialogues would be highly complementary to that effort and lead to, let's say, more solid and grounded pathways for the countries to commit to at the summit and beyond. So, given the diversity of coalition partners and the effort itself, we really tried to outline a few guiding principles for this. And I've just bolded some of them because I think they are worth highlighting here. One is that, again, going back to Solofina's presentations, I mean, all these food systems levels are very important, the urban or subnational, the national, regional, continental, global. But for us, we really saw national governments as a very good entry point of governance and agency. I mean, we have to acknowledge that the world today is still very much structured around this architecture of nation states. The second one was that we would really seek to be supportive and co-creative rather than prescriptive, again, seeing local ownership as key. Build on existing structures when feasible and create new ones only when necessary. And this is really a tension that we've had to navigate from the very beginning, right? I mean, whatever you try to do, there's already a structure in place. So do you try to build upon that structure, augment it, extend it, or create a new one when it's really necessary for real transformation? We thought it was important to embrace both evidence and innovation in this journey, and most important, to approach this challenge with an attitude of learning, humility, and optimism. I mean, I like to say that, we're all learners when it comes to the food systems, because it's such a multidimensional entity, right? That we all have something to contribute and learn. And again, just to give the, let's say, the big picture of the effort, we started with this diagnostic analysis in April. It was a bit of a sprint to really produce analysis that would be useful, you know, in the lead up to the summit, which of course happened in September. And then we are now in the transition to what we call internally to the initiative phase 2, which is really looking at the policy and delivery platform development, as well as low-hanging fruits that resonate with each country. And of course, once we get into this phase 2, it becomes highly contextual. It's really engaging even more deeply the local stakeholders to see where the support can be most helpful and value-adding. So just to say, you know, this is really a very like headline level synthesis of the Food Systems Summit, the Food Systems Diagnostics that emerged in the 3 countries, just really to give you a flavor of the breadth and depth of the analysis that was done. So for example, in Rwanda, the key food systems challenges that emerged were diet quality and nutrition security, livelihoods equity, environmental resilience, agricultural productivity, infrastructure capacity, and financing and investment. These diagnostics were developed by engaging local stakeholders, a team of local experts that covered the main dimensions of the food system, and very intensive interactions with the food systems dialogues as a process and individual participants in the dialogues as well. And then for each one of these challenges, we try to identify, again, at a high level, at an initial brush, some of the potential game changers that could be brought to bear. I mean, we acknowledge that, you know, to really prioritize game changers, one would have to do much more in-depth cost-benefit and trade-off analysis. But we thought it would be useful to already identify some of the game changers that were emerging both locally and in the context of the summit process. Again, Ghana, similar challenges, but let's say the issue of consumption of unhealthy ultra-processed foods emerged more prominently, as well as the discrepancies between regions, which is less of an issue, for example, in Rwanda. Again, just for the sake of illustration here, for each one of these challenges, we try to do a little bit of a deep dive as to, you know, why this is a priority, how would the country benefit from addressing the challenges. Some of the most important trade-offs to consider, I mean, trade-offs are ubiquitous in the food system and its transformation. Some of the policy opportunities that emerged, some of the potential implementation challenges, and who and how and by whom can this be done? So who would be the key stakeholders? So there was an important component of stakeholder analysis across the various sectors and by, let's say, action track of which stakeholders could play a role or would naturally play a bigger role in each one of these challenges. We also thought it was very important to create a sort of a scorecard or a set of super indicators, as we call them, that would enable countries to assess their current performance in terms of food systems outcomes and then track it you know, into the future. We used the framework of the 5 action tracks of the Food Systems Summit, and we added the 5th one that we thought was relevant on the issue of governance, and then try to identify what would be, let's say, good and sort of complementary sets of indicators to track progress against each one of those action tracks. Part of this work were also to identify some of the, let's say, gaps that the CADAP and its biennial review mechanism have in terms of more food system specific indicators. CADAP already has a good set of food systems indicators, but they certainly need to be augmented if we are to have this more holistic food systems approach to agricultural transformation. And so, you know, we saw that our main contribution going forward would be to helping align objectives and policies across ministries and agencies to accelerate this food systems transformation. I mean, if you look at how governments typically operate, I mean, right, there is still a fair deal of siloing across ministries, each with their own agendas. Different governments have different levels or mechanisms of coordination with varying degrees of effectiveness. But whatever the government, and this is not specific to Africa, this is really a global issue, can benefit from, let's say, more streamlined coordination and common delivery mechanisms and platforms, which in turn can lead to that more integrated and coherent policy that has been one of the, let's say, guiding principles for FSTIP, but also that Solofine alluded to in her presentation. So, you know, we identified 4 key areas where we initially thought our, let's say, support would be most welcome. One was the prioritization of the food systems challenges. What we saw in country after country is that countries emerged from the summit process and with their respective pathways with dozens of game changers and challenges to be addressed. And of course, there's only so much that any government anywhere in the world can really focus and deliver on. So we still think that this prioritization is very important. Then, of course, supporting the ambition setting, policy formulation to address those challenges. We also thought that support would be helpful in designing these governance, coordination, delivery platforms for the long-run delivery of food systems transformation. And another interesting deliverable that this effort produced was a toolkit to enable other countries to conduct their own food systems diagnostics analysis. The toolkit is finalized. We are just in the process of setting up the web page and posting it and making it available, disseminating for other countries to benefit. In the context of the summit and when countries were sort of, okay, what do we present at the food system summit? We recommended 4 immediate steps. Again, these were our recommendations. Governments were, of course, free to take them or leave them. But we really thought that in each of these 3 countries, having a high-level initiative for food systems transformation would give this effort the necessary visibility and cross-ministerial amplitude that it would need to be effective. Another one was the prioritization of the key food systems challenges, as I just mentioned. And then for each of those top challenges, developing policy, program, and investment bundles backed up by robust analysis, and then translating that into an action roadmap. And fourth, last but not least, having this discussion or initiating at least a discussion of a long-term governance, coordination, and delivery platform to drive food systems transformation into 2030 and beyond. One key learning that emerged for us from this experience was that despite taking policy as our, let's say, entry point and primary angle, we really felt that policy per se, let's say, didn't generate as much enthusiasm or traction with the different governments. And that's why, policy is itself a complex process. I mean, there are policy windows. Wherever you go, there are already strategies, policies, plans in place. So that tension that I was referring to between what exists versus the new. But if you approach things from, in some cases, an investment angle or program angle, then there's much more interest and enthusiasm, especially, and I think that is quite correlated with, let's say, the degree of maturity of the country's food system. So we realized that it would be much more effective to talk about these bundles of policies, programs, and investments, because they can really be mutually reinforcing, and by their very nature, engage the different sectors together with government in the journey. So let me illustrate with an example that emerged from our work with Ghana and Ghanaian stakeholders, and certainly, the coalition members, Amos Lar as one of our local experts and global experts on FSTIP. So 2 of the key challenges that emerged from the analysis in Ghana were the issues of diet quality, nutrition security, and consumption of unhealthy foods. So an example of a bundle of policies, programs, and investment that can address that is developing as the foundation a nutrient profiling system that can provide clear, consistent, transparent scoring of the healthiness of different foods, be them processed or even unprocessed. And then using that as, like I said, a data foundation to inform 1 or more policies that can be deployed sequentially or in parallel or in sub-bundles, however makes sense in the local context, but that together can be very mutually reinforcing towards improved food environments, nudging consumers towards healthier foods and away from unhealthy or ultra-processed foods. In the case of Rwanda, for example, the issue of food loss was mentioned as a very strong country priority by the Minister of Agriculture. So, you know, their solutions, again, investments, policies, program bundles that address the issue of food loss, bringing in both technology and investment, together with, you know, simple innovations that can work at the smallholder farmer, etc. The combinations of those generate traction and enthusiasm. In Malawi, for example, what emerged as a potential policy program and investment bundle was the issue of renewable energy to support greater production of nutritious crops. So again, from that one core theme, you can have policy program and investment prongs to move forward. So, you know, again, across the three countries, the support that we've offered for the post-summit was really along two main tracks. One was around low-hanging fruits, no regrets initiatives. So I would view, for example, in the case of Ghana, the development of this nutrient profiling system and perhaps a first policy attached to it as one of those low-hanging fruits. The second track was the support more from a process perspective to what comes after the summit. So the elements of prioritization and analysis of game changers, the aspects of identifying existing government flagship initiatives that can be leveraged to accelerate food systems transformation, support what you could call essentially a change management effort to embed food systems thinking or mainstream food systems thinking across agencies, strategies, policies, plans, budgets, creating perhaps communities of practice or food systems champions across agencies, for example, and supporting the design, again, of long-term governance, coordination, and delivery institutional frameworks. Now, these, let's say, ideas and suggestions had different levels of resonance in each of the three countries that we have been engaging. So the scopes that are emerging for us in Rwanda, Malawi, and Ghana right now are as follows. So in Rwanda, the Minister of Agriculture, who is, let's say, the focal point within government for the whole food systems topic, didn't really show great enthusiasm for that post-summit agenda in terms of prioritization. In her view, which we totally respect, the government already has food systems policies in place, already has the necessary interministerial coordination mechanisms and so forth. So that would be, let's say, of less interest. However, something like piloting, and this touches on some of the issues that emerged at the cities level, right? Piloting what we call school-driven food systems transformation was of great interest. So trying to leverage food procurement and other school-level activities to shift local production systems and local demand towards nutritious foods, with examples such as, you know, replacing refined flours with fortified whole grain flours, budget neutrally, trying to increase supply and consumption in schools of biofortified crops and the like. The other track around what we call good food policy, you know, the government itself recommended a very interesting entry point, which is the current midterm reviews of the strategic plans across ministries, and certainly these four, ag, health, environment, industry, and trade, are particularly relevant. So we are directly engaging with these review efforts because we think that there may be opportunities to, let's say, offer suggestions and recommendations that bring more of a food systems approach to the respective strategic plans. And then we'll also support a closure of sorts of the summit process, not in the sense that it is the end of it, but it's really the consolidation of it into, let's say, content that when the next strategic plans strategic plan development cycle comes up, that those inputs are ready to be fed into and to inform those strategies. And very briefly, in Malawi, I mentioned the topic of renewable power. Aquaculture and fisheries is also an area that has attracted the interest of government and local stakeholders. And again, the theme of institutional food procurement, including in schools. Ghana, we've touched upon already the NPS effort, but we're also exploring, still in conversations with the dialogue co-conveners, if there is interest in any post-summit agenda support along the lines I've described previously. More broadly, we are working with IDRC in the idea of setting up an African Food Systems Transformation Fund, trying to crowd in other funders, both from the philanthropy development agency side, but also bringing together public investment and private sector investment and funding in all its different modalities. So that's what I had to share. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to the Q&A section for more discussions.